Today I wanted to cover the topic of UX research and what are some of the goals that you want to be doing. I know that UX research can seem very intimidating. I remember the first time that I heard the word ethnographic study, I felt like I was an imposter. There was no way I was going to get so deeply into this matter of UX research. Well, I thought I could break this down and really level set things and just really make you understand that there's really only three things that you're going to be trying to get out of your interviews. And when you know what you're going after in the interviews, there are tips and tricks and there's do's and don'ts on all your interviewing. But if you know what you're going after, you'll have a very simplified approach to what you're trying to put together and what is the outcome that you're hoping to get out of your interviews. So the first thing that you're going to really want to get out of your interviews is you're going to want to discover about your user. I know this sounds very basic. On every project, you're going to have some kind of persona, whether they're formalized, whether they're written down. You're going to want to have some kind of behavioral clustering of the kinds of users that you're targeting. So when you do user interviews, you're going to want to find out exactly what are the wants, the needs, the behaviors, the goals, the aspirations, the beliefs, the attitudes of a user. And you're going to want to find these in a targeted kind of way that's related to your project. Now, there's always going to be this balance on how deep you're going to go versus how specific you're going to go to your project. You definitely want to go a little bit deeper in your interviews and ask some questions. Always ask another why. You may find out because that they're a mother and they've got 3 kids and they're very busy. This affects their attitudes on using a certain mobile application and whether they would be willing to be educated in a certain topic. So I wanted to give you an example. There was one time I was working on an intranet for a jewelry company, and we had a persona called Clyde, My Hands Are Tied. And so we actually had interviews with people that were working in the foundry. We got to talk to them. We were curious if they really were computer savvy people, but they really didn't have the opportunity to touch a computer at work. If they were going to get intranet news, what would be the best way for them to get it? How actually tied up are they? Can they actually click on a mouse and these kind of things? These are things that we need to find out in order before we would create an intranet that would be targeted towards them. And so we were able to find out they are people that use their phones, they're very savvy, they know what they're doing. They were a younger audience, but in the context of where they were, there was no way that they could put their hands on any kind of computer device. So we need to create television screens for them to kind of radiate information that would be useful to them rather than have them interact with the information. The next one is you're going to be doing some kind of concept interviews. We all hear about usability studies, but concept interviews are really the same thing. You're going to show UI interfaces. You're probably not going to have high fidelity designs, nor are you going to have prototypes where they can click on it. In this time, you're probably just going to want to show UI screens and get their feedback and reactions on how they feel, what's their attitude towards the screens that they're looking at. You might want to ask questions. Is this something that would be of use to you? Is this something that you would recommend to a friend? Would you pay this kind of price of going through the burden of paying for this amount of money to download this application if this is the kind of value it could provide to you? What your goal is you want to know if you're on the right track, if the application has the desirability that it needs to be a viable product or a feasible product out there on the internet. I wanted to give you an example of this. So one time I was working on a mobile application, there was an education component piece to this, and there was this kind of balance of things that we were offering them that was of value to them, and there were some things that we wanted to get from them. And so in this kind of way, we wanted to know, was the value that we were giving to our users enough so that they would go through the trouble of downloading this application, using up disk space on their phone, and would they also provide information and do certain kinds of tasks that would eventually be of value to them, but actually also give us the information that we need and also give us the opportunity to educate them on certain kind of topics that would be of a long-term benefit content to them, but we want to know, would the users be willing to do this? The last thing is usability studies. I think we all know about these. So usability studies, the two first studies are going to be very attitudinal, meaning we're really focused on how they feel and what they believe. And then in a usability study, you're going to be much more focused on behavior. The first two are going to be much more on the qualitative side. And the usability side, I would say, has a little bit of a quantitative side to it because it's going to be a little bit more objective. In a usability study, you're going to want to have a fully flushed out prototype, and you're going to want to put this interface either in their hands, if it's a mobile application, let them have a mouse, and be able to record the screen, watch their face, and actually watch the interaction of them performing certain kinds of tasks. You're going to want to learn, is this something that's usable? Is this something that they're getting hung up on? Are there any pain points that come along the way? Do you see any grimaces? And you're going to want to ask those users to give feedback, talk out loud the experience that they're going through. So this usability study is studying the user experience of them performing actual tasks without going too deeply into what are the motivations, beliefs, and behaviors. My final point that I really want to make is actually interviews are all some permutation of all three of these. Even if you're starting off your very first interview, you may talk to the customer about certain kind of competitors' interfaces, and you might ask them what are the pain points they have. In this way, you're touching on some things that are kind of conceptual, and they're getting a little bit more specific to the application. You may let them know that you have some intentions to create a certain kind of interface for them, and would they find this valuable to them. On the flip side, as you're doing a usability study, you may want to start off the interview with asking questions on what do you do? Can you walk me through the journey of your day as you're trying to perform XYZ tasks? And that task is related to your application. And so this would give you a lot of insight towards who the user is as well as the usability study. Now, that being said, of course, you're going to want to make sure that you're not trying to stuff 10 pounds into a 5-pound bag. You still want to be focused on your interviews, but again, you're always going to have some combination. If you plan your interviews to be about 45 minutes to 1 hour, you realize that there's quite a bit that you can do. You may find that you don't have enough screens to cover in the usability study, so that you can leverage that time to go into some of these other topics to discover more about the users and to discover more about the desirability of the product. And so there's a lot of do's and don'ts in user interviews, and you can get into those later. But if we don't know the outcome, if we don't know what we're trying to get out of the interviews, then I think we feel quite lost. We don't really know what we're doing. So start off with the outcome, know what you're trying to get out of these interviews, and put together maybe some kind of focus in these kind of 3 different areas of things that you're trying to find out in your interviews. So we'll be talking more about user interviews in the future, but I just wanted to leave you off with these 3 points to break down some of the fearful kind of expectations. And if you ever feel like you're an imposter in this field, just wanted to help simplify user interviews. So if you got this far in the video, I appreciate it. Go ahead and like and subscribe, as those would be things that would support me. I'll see you on the next episode.